You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. I can see on that. Let's talk about Cricket USA, the team, the national teams, Nate, men's and the women's and men's teams, and talk about them because many people would not know about the teams and the players and what they've been doing over the last few years. We'll start with the women's team. The women's team started playing T20 nationals in 2019. They've done okay in that time. They've played 22 matches. They've won 10 of them, lost 12 in that time.
Yeah.
They're still yet to play a women's ODI. They haven't had that opportunity yet, but hopefully in the near future. And the under-19 women's USA team played in the Under-19 World Cup in South Africa this year.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. Obviously, they lost all three matches in the group stage, but it was a good opportunity for them to learn and travel and play in a different country and play different teams around the world, which will put them in good stead going forward.
Sure.
Also, Tara Norris has announced us, a 24-year-old, did well in the women's IPL. I think she was the only associate player bought at the auction, and she took the first ever 5-wicket haul. 5 for 29 in one match in 4 overs, which is pretty good. Debuted in 2021 for the US and plays cricket in England because she moved there in, I think, 2006, it said. So she's doing well over there domestically. And then that's the women's team, but you have the men's team as well.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned earlier, Nate, they acquired ODI status in 2019, but the US have been playing one-day cricket for longer than that. But since 2004, they've played 51 ODIs. They've won 22, lost 27, and tied 2. And they recently qualified for the Cricket World Cup qualifiers in Zimbabwe. Didn't quite go to plan. They lost all 4 matches in the group stage, but it will put them in good stead. And obviously, as we mentioned before, the T20 World Cup as hosts will be a good opportunity for them to play well in that home tournament. So Nate, for those who may not know a lot about the women's and men's US teams, can you tell us more a bit about them in terms of the players, the stories, etc., from both the women's and men's?
Sure. The women's team, as with most women's international cricket, ground floor right now. You know, the women's setup. We didn't have obviously, most nations didn't have a U19 team until recently, on the women's side. So we have one now. A few years back, USA hired Julia Price to come and be the coach of the U.S. women's setup and to help with Julie Abbott and Nadia Grunny to help establish some kind of a pathway a national championship for we need something. There's only about 300 women in the USA that play cricket organized, and that's a very small amount. And so a lot of people talk about we got to get cricket into the NCAA, into college, and we're not going to do that unless we multiply the amount of women playing cricket by 10 or by 20 or 30. We're going to need 9,000 women playing cricket in the USA before the under the age of 22 or something, before we can justify a women's NCAA, and we can't get a men's NCAA unless we get a women's NCAA, because you got to do both of them pretty much. There's all kinds of rules about that. I won't get into that too much, but so it's only been a short term where the women's team has actually, the women's setup has gotten a lot of momentum. Now, the current national governing body is so strapped for money and so strange with their motives, or with their priorities, I should say, that we're always at the mercy of that. And this is the problem with national governing bodies. It's a serious problem. It's not just us that have this problem. It's everybody. And so almost everybody. But yes, so you have all these young players, and USA has played a lot more young women in their women's team, in their senior women's team, than ever before, because of these pathways, because we've been turning over new talent. We've got Geetika Kodali, who is the U19 captain, U19 women's team captain, and the vice captain of the women's team. And she, so she actually moved to North Carolina from California because she wanted to have access to Church Street Park here. She wanted to have access to the local coaches. So her whole family moved her here when she was in high school for cricket. So that speaks to the reputation of this community, but it also speaks to the dedication of somebody like Gitiko, who is a tall, fast bowler. And so yeah, you have young players like her, Sani Michaela, Anika Kolan, Lisa Ramjit, who actually dropped out. She stopped playing cricket because it's hard when you get to the college age. People make a lot of decisions. She joined the Air Force.
Yeah.
So this is an issue we're dealing with, retaining these 300. We have 300 women playing cricket, and we got to retain them. And so this is the ground floor. Hopefully, we can make these opportunities more equitable for women playing cricket. Hopefully, the local leagues is where it's really important. They need to make space for women to play cricket. It's hard for the local leagues it's hard to get them to make space for youth. So it's not always true, but it is one of the challenges. So yes, we have a lot of promising young female cricketers, a lot of women that are promising, and we need to make sure that we keep the momentum that we have, and we retain these players and communicate well with them. The national governing body, the coaching staffs need to communicate well with them. Now, obviously, Julia Price isn't here anymore, but the years that she was here, a couple of years, the 1 year she was here, the improvement that we had, and we implemented a national championship, which was very interesting. Like I said before, one of our biggest challenges, the nation's humongous. And when you have a nation geographically as big as ours, but where only 300 women are playing cricket, they're spread out like crazy. So our national championship starts with sub-regional, then regional, and then national. And so what they would do is, instead of a team advancing to each phase, like the winning team advancing to each phase, it was every level they would reshuffle the teams. They would repick a team. So when you go from the sub-regional to the regional selectors are choosing the best players from the sub-regional. And then when you go from the regional to the national teams, there's two of them. There's the West and the East or whatever. Those two teams are picking based off who performed at the level before. So that's a good way to do it. We needed to do it that way. It was smart, and it led to us having some success. But yeah, it's the ground floor for women's cricket. I'd like to see us capitalize on it. The men's team, yes, achieved the ODI status in 2019. Really important, good for the budget, but had mixed success in their 3 years of ODI cricket. Playing 12 ODIs a year for 3 years. Well, supposedly that, obviously, COVID shook that up a bit, but they did play 36 one-day internationals. And kind of the knock on the men's team is they don't seem to stand up in the clutch situations. They'll make it to the qualifier, and then they'll get blown away like they did this time. And that's kind of the knock on them and on the men's team right now. And selection is a big concern for everybody in the nation, as some of these MLC contracted players become eligible for USA, having been here for 3 years. Some of these players, and right before Major League Cricket, they were getting overlooked. Corey Anderson was overlooked for selection before he's eligible. He was overlooked for selection for the World Cup qualifier. For whatever reason, nobody knows why. The selectors didn't take him, and then he goes out, and in his first innings in Major League Cricket, he scores like 91 runs. And everybody's like, now everyone's saying, why didn't you take Corey Anderson?
Yeah.
It's and this is why
his track record and playing for New Zealand.
Given the fact that he's Corey Anderson, now that we have Major League and Minor League Cricket actually helped to take steps with this too, because we had this history of never picking younger players and developing them. And then Minor League happened, and we had standout performers in Minor League Cricket who were under the age of 21, who, Saimu Kamala, for example, youngest centurion for USA Cricket, and he did it in USA's largest successful chase. So 18 years old when he did it. So, all of a sudden we have these young players playing in the, these 18, 19-year-olds playing in the USA setup because of minor league. Now that we've had major league, we're going to get even more, hopefully even more scrutiny over the selectors. The selectors will have a little bit more respect of the major league performers. We're hoping. So, in the next year, so many of these guys become eligible for the USA national team, and it will be great to see what happens. And hopefully, some of them, so hopefully we get the right players in the team. Who cares who they are?
Yeah.
If they're the ones that are going to help us win in the World when we make it to the World Cup, we win a few games in the World Cup at that stage at home. That's fantastic. That's what we need to do. And so who knows what's going to happen now, because the ICC doesn't have a calendar right now for the Cricket World Cup League 2 or anything like that. So we don't know when our next games are going to be. But it's very important that we get the selection right for the next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And let's see what both teams can do. They've got potential. They've got good players who are talented, and just need to fine tune those, fine skills, how to handle pressure and clutch moments, which is a big thing in cricket, because when you're under pressure, you got to handle that.
Yep.
So it's going to be a constant development sort of thing with the teams going forward, which it is with every associate nation.
Yeah.
But if you can win big games in big tournaments, like a T20 World Cup for the men's next year, that would do wonders for the team's confidence and morale, because knowing that we can look at what in the last T20 World Cup the Netherlands did.
Yeah.
And Zimbabwe and all these teams, and Namibia in not the last World Cup in Australia, but the one in the UAE.
Yeah.
They qualified for the Super 12 stage.
Yep.
And they did well. So there is potential there that you can look at other teams that can inspire you. So hopefully that's the case with both the women's and men's teams.
And look at Thailand women's team. Find inspiration from them. And the fair break is such a great thing for the women's cricket. Yeah. It's fair. And we're hoping to get the fair break here in Morrisville in a couple of years, or maybe next year. We're hoping to. Hopefully they'll go that way. Now they might just do it in Grand Prairie in Dallas, but I'll tell you what, if they do it here in Morrisville, they'll get better attendance, guarantee it, because we have local cricketers who will be playing in that fair break, and people will come out and cheer for them. Yeah. And I would rather watch the fair break at a full Church Street Park than at a half full Prairie View. Grand Prairie. There's another place called Prairie View, so I get the two of them confused. But Grand Prairie,
hopefully we do, and hopefully we see the women play another, like Tara Norris.
IPL,
exactly. WBBL in Australia, the Women's Big Bash. So hopefully we'll see many, even the men. What's his name from the US that plays for the Melbourne Renegades?
It was Unmucked Chant.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. He had an opportunity to play for the Renegades, and
he didn't do great. He didn't do terrible. But I did talk to James, the what is his last name? Their general manager. I interviewed him. I cannot remember his last name, but I interviewed him for an episode, and then I actually got to see him again because he works with the San Francisco Unicorns, obviously.
Yeah.
So I got to talk to him again in person this time, and that was great. We had a great talk. What is James' last name? Let me see. Looking it up. James Rosengarten. Yeah. Yes. Great guy. Terrific guy. But yeah, I got to talk with him about the plans that San Francisco has, about what they're planning on, how they view the domestic structure, and if they're planning on doing any type of affiliations with any minor league teams and things like that. And because we need these major league teams to give it back a little bit,
Yeah. That's right. For the game to grow, you need help. You need people helping each other.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah.
We need them to in cricket.
That's right.
Or in society in general, actually.
Very true.
So, if we help out each other, then the game will only prosper from that, would it? But we're not doing that at an international level in cricket, which is frustrating for everyone.
It's very,
I can
very
sense the
frustrating.
frustration in your voice. You're absolutely seething.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's out of our control. It's up to the powers that be to make those tough decisions. And they got to realize the problems that the game faces at the moment, because they're not quite seeing that.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah. They have to realize, and they have to care about how to fix it instead of caring about the next conquest, the next small conquest. But that's the state of international capitalism right now. Also, is everything is about the next. If you're not winning right now on this very issue, you're losing. And it's like, sometimes we need to make investments in our future, and sometimes we have to play things slowly. It's baseball doesn't work all the time.
That's for sure. For our next topic, Nate, let's talk about the growth and development of cricket in the USA, because I think a lot of people have questions about that. How are you incorporating cricket into local communities, clubs, organizations, grassroots coaching, clinics, schools? I know Cricket USA had a strategy, which I read briefly, their foundational plan or something like that, whatever, as many cricket boards do. They had some goals and targets in mind. But cricket in America, Nate, as we've discussed, the long history with each other is quite prominent. Many people have done lots to introduce cricket into the US. Now, obviously, for those who don't know, the first ever international match of cricket was played between the US and Canada, which was in 1844. You put that into context, that was before the first test match in 1877 between Australia and England, which was played in Melbourne at the MCG.
Right.
Don Bradman, the great Don Bradman in 1932, with an Australian touring team, toured Canada and the US to play cricket, which Bradman only agreed to because he recently got married to his wife, and it was their honeymoon. So he said, "I'll go on the tour, but if Lady Jessie, which was his wife, can come, then I'll come." So he did. So and obviously he met Babe Ruth. There's a photo of him and Babe Ruth watching a baseball game at Yankee Stadium. Babe Ruth, one of baseball's finest batters of all time, and meeting one of cricket's finest batters in Don Bradman.
Right.
And then obviously in recent times, there have been some initiatives or, people bringing cricket into the US. The late Shane Warne and Sachin Tendulkar did a thing, Cricket All-Stars, back in 2015. They brought some legends of the game to play at baseball stadiums, Citi Field, Flushing Meadows, New York, Minute Maid Park in Houston, and Dodger Stadium, which are pretty big stadiums in the baseball world in the US. So many people have tried to promote the game in the US, but in order to make it a mainstream sport, Nate, in the US in terms of cricket, the growth and development side is going to be most crucial and critical in that, to make that goal a reality, because you need to have a good foundation. Like we do here in Australia, like we do in England, like we do in India. You need to build that. But in the US, a lot of people probably think that's not quite happening. So how do Cricket USA establish grassroots cricket clubs at local communities, competitions, underage pathway systems, facilities? Like you go down to your local park, is there a cricket net that you can practice, or is there a cricket ground? Making cricket accessible to people. Where can you buy cricket equipment? I'm sure many sporting shops in America don't have a helmet or a bat, so you have to get that from online. So you got to make that accessible. Getting cricket into schools, the collegiate sort of system, college or universities. I know they call them colleges in America. We call them universities here,
right,
in Australia. Getting to their sporting programs, because pretty much college sport in America is quite big, as we know. So if you get cricket into that, then that's another pathway for potential athletes to go into. So what challenges does Cricket USA have in this, Nate? Trying to grow and develop cricket in America in the community, build that foundation, because that's where you're going to get your players from, young players, kids getting involved. And do you see cricket becoming a mainstream sport in the US? Because I know Cricket USA said they want to do that by 2030 and become a full member as well. So what are your ideas on that?
Well, a few things. First of all, for reasons I mentioned earlier, we're closer to being a full member nation than we are to having cricket in the NCAA, and that's because of the lack of the women that play cricket. And there are laws about this. You can't just put a new men's team into the university system and not have a women's version. You can, but you're going to have to cancel. You would have to cancel another men's program. So if you have 12 men's programs, you need to have 12 women's programs. And so you're talking about, and there's a long process for getting in the NCAA as a full NCAA member sport. There's a long process. You need a club league first. The club leagues are that run at the schools by the club itself, and there are scholarships in club leagues, but you have to recruit that. You have to recruit that from private people, and so these things don't exist very much in cricket in the USA. There's not, because of the fact that most of the people that play cricket in the USA, I think, in a way, are transient, at least at first. A lot of people who play cricket at the college age have just gotten here to go to college, and so they don't care as much about what they leave behind.
Yeah.
They don't care about the legacy they leave behind, or they don't care about the people who haven't just gotten here who might want to play cricket in college or something like that. So they're not going to band together to build an infrastructure that's going to outlive them. They're not going to do that. So that's one of the problems with college. So I could go on forever about this particular topic, but I won't, so that I can go on forever about others. No, yes, you ask a lot of really, really, really good questions there, Jack. You really do, and these are all these are all fundamental problems that we need to look at the way that you are when you pose these questions, and that is, yes, the local leagues, they're all recreational by and large. They'll play on the worst field you've ever seen in your life. That's got
as many do.
That's got an AstroTurf wicket.
Yeah.
And this is not doing anything for the level of cricket in the USA. This is not doing anything to raise cricket. The average person doesn't care about youth cricket. They want to go out there and have their own fun. And so this is why minor league's so important, because minor league, when minor league started, you could count the number of facilities in the US with a grass turf wicket on one hand. You could count them. And so for a while in minor league cricket, a lot of minor league cricket was played on Astro, on these terrible grounds where the grass is as long as my face. And and so the outfield grass. And outfield is at least as important as the wicket. So, because it teaches you how to make proper cricket shots. So, we have a history of our domestic cricket being singles and sixes, because you can hit a perfect cover drive that's going to get stopped by the grass, or if you really want boundaries, you gotta hit them over the rope. So it's minor leagues addressing that. The infrastructure is by far the hardest challenge in cricket in the USA. We have good cricketers here. We have plenty of good cricketers here, but we don't have the infrastructure. We're getting that. Minor league has a mandate now in their third year that every game has to happen. You saw that there's 26 teams and there's 17 venues, right? The reason why there's not 26 venues is because the mandate says that you have to play on at least a hybrid wicket, or better. That is laying a foundation where all those other questions you asked can get answered. If we don't have that infrastructure going on, how can we grow as a cricketing nation in the appropriate ways? And obviously the next one is access for children. Cricket's a very expensive sport
Yeah.
here. Youth sports in the USA are moving towards the upper middle class, like at rocket speed. Every youth sport is turning into travel leagues that cost thousands a year per kid. The average American cannot afford this at all. And cricket is no different than this. Cricket is probably worse. Cricket might be the future of other sports when you look at this. So we need to get it in. People talk about getting it in the schools. That's hard because we don't have schools. We don't have school leagues until middle school or high school. You know what I mean? So what we need to do is the municipal recreational leagues that are public. Those need to be these grounds are being left behind by baseball because fewer kids are playing all sports because it's the only sports that exist for them now are the expensive options, and their parents don't feel for some reason the value in not having them in a sport where they can pursue a scholarship, which is crazy. You should be playing the sport because you enjoy it and because it teaches you good lessons and all the reasons we love sports. That's why you should play them. And that's, and so we need to build that culture in the municipal parks and recreations departments of local cities. I feel this way, and I feel this way to the point where I actually have my own program not my own, it's the city's program, but the city of Raleigh. I have one place, the community center across the street from my house, where for 2 seasons every year, I do a beginner cricket session. It's all indoors, and it's all for ages 7 to 12. And it's all about teaching the kids what cricket is and playing the game. We play games the whole time, and we improvise. It's like playing in your backyard. So this is a hard thing to do, and I'm learning the limitations of doing it this way also. And because what happens is if you do, all of a sudden you do fill the classroom up every week. Well, now the kids have to have somewhere to go for part 2.
You want to make it more, as they usually say, many people that question coaching in all sports, you have to make it enjoyable for the participants so they come back. In cricket, you have to do that. Because cricket's an individual sport. But it's a team game. But if you're not really doing much in a game, as we mentioned earlier, the ball may not come to you. You may not even bowl an over or something. You may get out first ball, and then you don't do anything. So they won't come back.
It's tough.
So you have to make it excitable, and you have to make it attractive to young kids in particular.
That's
make them keep coming back and get that sort of cricket bug.
That's exactly right. It's kind of like golf. You make one good. You do one good shot, you want to come back the next week. You clean bowl the best guy in the class one day. Man, now you're a bowler. You know what I mean? Now you're a bowler. But
some people can get discouraged by that, knowing that I'm out.
You're right. You're right. But that's okay, because I think every sport presents its lessons to the kids, and I try to tell all these kids. The biggest thing is I don't care if you're in the middle at Grand Prairie Stadium if you're batting in the middle in the final at Grand Prairie Stadium in Major League Cricket, or if you're in my gym, and we're playing a game and it's the last over and you need 8 to win and there's 4 balls left. The kids get nervous in that situation. They do. It is just a recreational game, and they get nervous. And I always focus on this when I talk with them on that particular thing. I'm like, look, we're here to have a good time. You're gonna get nervous. It's you versus him. It's you versus him or you versus her. It's always gonna be that way. And you know what? Sometimes you go out there and you do your best and you do it perfectly, and then they do it perfectly and they beat you. And so guess what? Shake it off. Move on to the next one. Enjoy the fact that you just experienced that. I try to tell them these things like relax. It's no big deal. And so
it's not like the T20 World Cup final or something. It's not like you're bowling a super over.
No, but in cricket, there's a lot of nervous moments. There's a lot.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about it. And it teaches the kids how to deal with those nervous moments. And you're the center of attention. Everyone's watching you, and your team depends on what you do next. And so these are good lessons the kids can learn. And but right now it's all about all those things that you said. It's all about, there's a giant 20-story ladder, right? And we have the top rungs pristine, beautiful. The last 10 steps, perfect. And we have 3 steps at the bottom that are perfect. And then we have 18 stories of steps in the middle that we need to fill in. Like it's really, really hard. There's a lot that needs to happen, and it's hard to do it. But making things equitable is the only way. Well, making things attainable is the only way. Making it accessible for kids that don't have a lot of money. That's the only way you're going to fill these gaps, because otherwise the only people that are playing are the ones that can afford to put a jetpack on and blast off from the third rung to the top floor.
Yeah, pretty much. And cricket is such an expensive sport because you have to buy pads.
It is, but you guys do it so well in Australia. You guys do it.
We have a good system.
Well. You got a really
good system because we have clubs at local levels. Because if you live in the sticks, like the country, you have a cricket club.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in the cities, you have many cricket clubs in the built-up areas.
Sure.
But the parks, I can walk down the street of my house and I'll go down to the park and there's a net. And I can have a ball or a bat with a friend.
That's great.
Because we have a good system. Because cricket being an established sport in Australia, of course, it's going to happen naturally, this sort of thing. Whereas in the US, it's not a national sport.
No, it's a business
not quite that. Yeah, so you have to start from scratch. But we have a good system. Yeah. And we have programs for kids, as you mentioned, coaching clinics. Yeah. Like if you're a part of a cricket club in Australia, we have a program called Blast Cricket, where you teach junior cricketers for like 10 or so weeks about the game, and you play fun games for like a day every week, maybe during the week or something at your local club. Yeah. The one club that I'm playing for here in my area, we have one, and we have kids that play and have fun, have a good time, and just have a good time, and then obviously you play cricket on a Saturday and Sunday with your club mates, your teammates, and you have a good time. You have a drink after the game, which you do in Australia. Maybe a cold one, as we say, a beer, as you do, because that's a part of the cricketing culture in Australia. You have a drink afterwards, but I don't drink. But your teammates do that, and you have a chat with the opposition as well. Yeah. So these are the things that US cricket is missing out on, because
I agree with you.
Camaraderie-ship's a big thing in cricket.
Yeah.
You meet such good people in cricket, outside cricket or playing cricket, your teammates, whatever.
Yeah.
But I just feel like if the game is to grow in America, you need to have the good foundational base.
You need real club systems, is what we need.
Domestic club systems in region. Just even like, doing coaching clinics in school, which they do here in Australia. Yeah. The state association, like all the states and the territories have their own bodies. Yeah. And there's Cricket Australia that make up the country. Yeah. And they have programs that we're going to have coaching clinics. We're going to go to schools in the country and the cities and get kids involved in cricket. But whereas the US, as you mentioned, it's a bit of a hard thing because they don't really have those sort of things. So
No, this is why I like the fact that there's 2 Australian state boards that are involved in Major League Cricket. This is why I really like the New South Wales setup. Lee Germain is their CEO, and I think he's really plugged in. You got Michael Klinger, who's the GM of the team, and then you got Patrick Farhart, who's also helping out with the team in I think a physio capacity, but also in a management capacity too. Now these guys had great conversations with each of these fellas, and they understand. They really do express interest in helping the domestic product here, and so I think I have a lot of, I have a lot of respect for them. James as well from the San Francisco Unicorns. But yes, these fellas from New South Wales, if they can, I was so excited about that because they do things so well. If they could emulate some of that in the DC area for that DC team.
Sorry to cut in there, Nate. They are the strongest cricketing state in the history of Australian cricket.
They're the strongest cricketing state in the world.
Pretty well in Australia. They are. They won 9 Sheffield Shields in a row, I think.
Jeez. They know what they're doing.
They're well driven. It's the same with their BBL, WBBL teams, the Sydney Thunder, the 60s.
Yeah, and
they have so much success.
in talking to them, they're like, we think that we would like to build, and they want to build an advantage in a competitive advantage in by kind of like working with the domestic structure here and helping to create one and helping to make it better. Now, in order for them to get the competitive advantage that they want, there's going to have to be some rule changes about the retentions and about how the league drafts. And you want to motivate guys like this to say, okay, look, build your academies, build your system, build your club system, however you want to, and then keep the players that come through there. Otherwise,
and then you have underage carnivals and pathways.
And
like we do here in Australia, under 15s, under 16s, under 17s.
Yeah. So if you motivate, if you can give them that incentive to do that, I think these guys will. It's just obviously it's a massive investment, and they have to see something in it for themselves.
You have to have enthusiastic people.
You do.
You've got to have people that care and that really want this to succeed.
Right.
That's the only way that's stopping you.
Yeah. And if
it's like talking to a brick wall, you're not going to get a response.
Right.
You're bashing it hard.
Yeah.
Come on, you can see the potential here.
Yeah.
Let's do it. But there's so red tape and all this stuff.
Well, yeah.
It's very frustrating.
And the way that these guys think is the way that the New South Wales guys think isn't like, well, we have to go out and get our instant victory this moment and destroy whatever and forget about the long term. Just go out. You know what I mean? They're used to thinking about building something bigger that becomes a powerhouse. And so if they can, and here's some incentive for them. If they build some kind of a decent platform here, or something, we have opposite summers as Australia.
Yeah.
So if we have some kind of a good system, some kind of a good club structure or something like that, you could send young, aspiring cricketers over here in the wintertime to play in minor league or to play in whatever you establish yourself. And we could send ours to them. And that's a great trade. And imagine how much better our cricketers could be spending a summer in Australia playing, high level club cricket or something. That would be ridiculous.
Club grade cricket or Premier cricket.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. If our U23s can go there and spend a summer, they'll come back.
You'll learn a lot.
They'll learn a lot.
You'll learn a lot about Australian culture. You learn how cricket's played here.
Yeah.
And to have a good time because you're here for. And that's the case with many other players that come here as professionals to play for clubs or anything like that.
Yeah.
You just there to have a good time, but learn as well.
That's right.
Talking to people.
Yeah.
And we do that so well in Australia. And that's why our participation numbers at junior level for boys and girls have increased over the last few years.
Something you should be proud of. You should be super proud of it.
Especially women's cricket, I think. The growth of women's cricket has definitely taken off in Australia big time.
Absolutely.
Because you've seen the women's team. They just win everything,
Right.
They're pretty
successful. Our women's soccer. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Which, got knocked out recently in the Women's World Cup here in Australia, the US team. Sorry to bring that up, Nate, but
no, that's okay. Hey, you know what? It's nice to see the new challenges arising, and I think we just need to step up to the challenge. That's it, and the focus just needs to get sharper. That's all.
Yeah, so hopefully Cricket USA can take stock of this and listen to
this podcast.
Well, listen, yes, we're not big by any means, but we want cricket to succeed in all parts of the world. We want it to prosper.
Yeah.
Great to see countries doing that.
Yeah.
But you just need to build that base. If you build that base, it will be strong. And hopefully it will take off in the US, which many people are questioning about.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait and see on that. Well, Nate, we got to the end of this discussion today. It's been a long one. We have to split it into two parts. It's gone for 2 hours.
You might. I think we talked for an hour before we even recorded.
Yes, we did, which was nice. It was good to break the night, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I thought to end our discussion today, Nate. It's been a bit of a long one. So thank you everyone for still listening to us. I hope you haven't fallen asleep because we tend to witter on about things, but we care. Me and Nate are passionate cricket lovers.
We're solving problems right now.
We're sitting here like a couple of mates, as we say in Australia, just solving the world's problems, just talking about the world issues.
That's right.
In cricket, that is.
Yeah,
which can be very frustrating. And Nate has been so frustrated. The conviction in his voice.
But I'm optimistic.
Well, you got to be optimistic rather than pessimistic, as they say.
You have to. Yeah. In all aspects. Yeah.
So to end our discussion today, Nate, I asked our listeners to send in questions for you to answer. That's all right with you?
Perfect.
So we have some questions here. So the first one's from the Stats Man. This is from Instagram. He says, if the US wants its cricket to be an NBA Major League Baseball level, 3 steps you would see the US Cricket Board do. What are your thoughts on that?
First of all, if you want to get to the level of Major League Baseball, the first thing you need to do is adopt a incredibly patient expectation. Like you have to basically you need a 50-year plan. Baseball for all of the overhype, all of the over talk about how it's on the decline, it's still averaging 26,500 fans per game. And they've recently managed to reduce the length of their games by 35 minutes on average. That is immense. That's incredible. So they're making they're taking dramatic action to address what they perceive as their problem.
Thing. And sorry to butt in, Nate, but I guess that's the same thing in cricket with over rates. That's been a big talking point.
It's huge.
So I guess that's the same with baseball with the duration of the innings. I'm not sure if there's any time limit on baseball matches.
Well, there's
my baseball.
There's a pitch clock now.
Limited.
Yeah, there's a pitch clock now. So in between pitches, you have X amount of time, and the pitcher has to be ready to pitch, and the batter has to be ready to bat, or else there's a consequence. And it's an immediate consequence. So yes, I think you have to be patient. If you want it to reach that level, you have to be very inclusive, and you have to find some kind of way to make cricket accessible to people, because you can take advantage of the fact that every sport's moving away from accessibility, and you can be the accessible sport, and that would really pay off in spades. And I think you need those 2 things, and then I think I don't know. It's tough to just choose one more. But so I'll just say you need to have continuity. You have to have continuity. You can't have a national governing body that's going to change their strategy every time we have a new configuration.
I think that's a pretty good answer there. So thank you, Statsman, for your question.
Thanks, Statsman.
Answered it to the best of your ability. So we have our last listeners' questions from a regular listener of the podcast, Jihan. Thanks, Jihan, for your questions. He has 4 of them for you, Nate.
Cool.
4 separate questions for you to answer.
Oh, good.
They're quite good questions.
I'm sure they are. Look, you got a loyal listener right there. I'm sure they're great questions.
Yeah. Jihan tends to have his good knowledge on the game, so he wanted to ask these questions to you. The first one is, Nate, do you think the US aspiring to play Test cricket is a realistic expectation? And given the state of Test cricket outside of the big 3, looking at the varying declines of the West Indies, Sri Lanka, and South African Test cricket, is there much point in trying to achieve that goal? Should the USA be trying to mainly focus on T20 internationals and ODI cricket?
Is that all 4 of the questions?
That's just the first one.
I'm just kidding. No, I don't think it's necessary for us to. I think it should be off our radar to try to get full member status. At least as far as full member status applies to playing tests. Yeah. Now, obviously, full member status without playing tests is a real thing at this point. So that would be a great achievement. Obviously, you want more funding from the ICC. That's the biggest thing, and you want to play against the big dogs. You really, if we can get good enough to play against India and in Australia, that would be a huge thing for cricket in the USA. So it should be a goal to go as far as we can, but not by playing tests. We just don't have the infrastructure for Test cricket right now. We're a T20 country, and that's that.
that's pretty much going to be difficult. But I think to be a full member, you have to play Test cricket.
I mean, like, it's
that's something that the ICC have in there.
I think the ICC can over the years will massage those requirements.
Yeah.
That's the hope. That's the hope. So to me, I guess the answer to that is I hope the ICC comes around and changes their requirements for full member.
Yeah, well, I suppose it comes back to Americans not wanting to watch a game for 5 days.
Well, that's not that. See, I think Americans would
which
really
is generally the general perception that people have on the outside.
Yes, it is the perception, but we also have the best golf in the world, and and we'll have golf that'll take 4 days, a golf tournament, and people watch it and they love it. And so I think, look, anybody I know who gets into cricket eventually says Test cricket is amazing, or they got into cricket because of Test cricket. So Test cricket is an amazing thing, but it's not going to happen here. I don't see that it's necessary, or I would love it. That would be great, but we are way off from that. And the talent gap between us and India in T20 is one thing, but the talent gap between us and India in Test, it's a whole nother thing.
It's sort of with Ireland and Afghanistan.
Yeah,
really, you can see that golf.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Like Rashid Khan, best bowler in the world and best T20 cricketer in the world, probably.
Yeah,
but in a Test, he just doesn't have the weapons around himself.
No, he doesn't.
To protect him and to make him as effective as he can be.
He doesn't have the skills. You have to be patient in Test cricket. You have to bowl a certain delivery and then change it up. Don't bowl different variations like you do in T20 match. You're not going to get wickets.
Right.
So that's why he struggles a bit. But he's good in T20s. But when he plays Test, he struggles, as his record suggests. But that's down to the infrastructure and the things that both Ireland and Afghanistan have to deal with.
Well, look how long Bangladesh had to go before they won. Look how long every Test nation that wasn't one of the first.
And they've been playing Test cricket for 23 years. They got Test Madison 2000.
Yeah. So it takes a long time to catch up in Test cricket. It takes a really long time to catch up. India were terrible for a long time.
They were in the early years.
They were not good, and now they're good. And it just, we don't need to take that route. We don't have to take that route. We shouldn't. And it's not our culture right now.
No, it's not just that sort of. Maybe maybe.
I'd love to see us once we have these venues. I'd like to see us host some neutral tests. That would be incredible.
Yeah, you could do that if countries aren't able to host countries in their games in their own countries. You can have a neutral venue like that. Maybe. For Test matches, like they do in the UAE.
Sure. Exactly. We almost had that here. Actually, this is a tragic story. We almost had that here. It's the story is that Disney was going to build a facility like that in Florida, and it was going to host neutrals. And the USACA at the time was the governing body for USA, and they were so protectionist and combative against they didn't like not being involved in the thing. And so they basically just made everyone's life hell and ruined it. So it didn't happen. That was like 20 years ago or something. So
no, it wasn't. No, you learn something new every day in cricket.
You do. Over here, you learn some very sad things all the time.
But going back to your Test point there, Test cricket. It's like Nick and Gabe, for example. They fall in love with Test cricket because they watched it and they said, "This is great.
It's incredible."
And they generally love it.
It's. I avoid it because I know I will fall into it. I have too many things to do. But like I know that if I get engrossed in a good Test, that will be the only thing I do.
Yeah, sort of like with me in this recent Ashes series. Every Test was on the edge. It was scintillating cricket. England were playing, and then Australia, sort of being challenged, and but that's what Ashes cricket's about. But trying to convey that to Americans is another thing. But Nick and Gabe, got into the Ashes spirit then. Someone sent them an Ashes urn, actually.
Oh yeah,
replica. Yeah.
that's
So
awesome.
Gabe has the urn because Australia won the Ashes. They retained it. So he gets to keep it for a couple of years, and then it'll be back up for grabs again.
That's so
And
cool. Yeah.
when England come back to Australia in 2025, 2026, because that's how the Ashes work, every few years, every 4 years for an Australian team to tour England.
Yeah.
So even with that, they got engrossed with that.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
They just love it because the first cricket they watched was Test cricket.
Yeah.
It was when the West Indies played England during COVID.
Wow,
And,
really? Yeah.
Yeah. And they got into that, and they stringed the matches.
It seems like just yesterday. And West Indies, Pakistan, they did such a solid to England right there. They did them such a favor.
They did because we needed cricket.
We needed cricket. I watched those. I watched those, and then all of a sudden you got these teams canceling on Pakistan. When it comes down to it, a couple of years later.
Yeah,
it's like a year later, and it's like.
But they did their thing for cricket at that time, and that's how Nick and Gabe got into Test cricket.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
They loved it. So I had one person that commented on my one of my episodes that I did for the last Ashes series in Australia back in 21, 22, and he was from America. This person. Oh yeah. And he said, "I love your channel because it helps me better understand cricket." And I was like, "Oh, that's nice." Very kind of you. Yeah. And he said, I really like T20 cricket and looking forward to that and learning more about that and watching more games and something like that. Anyway, and then I think he mentioned, I'm unsure about Test cricket. And then I replied to him and I said, give it a go.
Yeah.
You'll love it.
Yeah.
You'll love it. Yeah. It was just before the Ashes started.
Right.
I said, watch this Ashes series. Then hopefully that will change your mind because it will.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing. I love the Ashes. When I really do enjoy the Ashes. I follow it as much as I can. This year was hard because we had so much going on. We had 2 tests and then basically MLC started, and so it was I couldn't do anything at that point. Yeah,
there's just so much cricket on, isn't it? In the international calendar, it's just crazy.
It's crazy.
It's very hard to keep up on things. But
true.
I thought that was a nice comment. And many of our listeners and viewers on YouTube are from the Caribbean, and from the US, some of them.
Oh, so many passionate Caribbean fans. I think that fan base is drastically underappreciated and underrated. Yeah,
because they love their cricket as much as everyone does.
They do.
Hopefully the West Indies can get back to their best because they're not quite at their best at the moment. They're struggling big time.
Yeah.
So hopefully they do get back to their best because they were a proud cricketing country.
They should still be proud. They should still be proud. It's
they have some great players.
Look, they've won 2 World Cups in T20 in the last 10 years, right?
Yeah. So 50 over World Cups as well. They won a T20 World Cup, and they're not going to be in the World Cup this year, which is going to be weird. They were the first inaugural ones. They won the first 2.
Yeah.
They haven't qualified, but I think it was just a matter of time before that was going to happen.
Yeah.
You want to see that.
It happens. It's a cruel system. It's a cruel system to get in. Honestly, that entire Cricket World Cup, that whole qualifier, Zimbabwe looked like they were going to walk in from the first day. And then Scotland looked like they were going to win. They did some dramatic things. And then it turns out Netherlands advances.
And there was some super overs and that. It was very hard for me to follow the qualifiers because of the Ashes and other stuff.
Yeah, it was good.
Trying to balance that out on a podcast. You can only do certain things. I guess that's the same with Nick and Gabe as well, covering cricket, but it's hard for them because everyday life doesn't stop.
No, it doesn't.
And you have to try and do that. So
that's right. Yeah. You end up sacrificing sleep.
Yeah, that's right. Like I did for 5 Test matches, staying up until 4 a.m. 3.
Yeah, perfect.
Not good for the old system, but just getting back to a normal sleep pattern.
Yeah.
It's pretty good, but it will be a bit different for the World Cup later this year in India. So
yeah.
Anyway, we digress. But the second question from Jihan Nate is, what's the progress been like in fueling the interests of homegrown Americans who aren't necessarily from the Commonwealth backgrounds, in brackets, subcontinent, Caribbean, British, Australian, etc. Specifically, the interest in playing at a domestic level as well as American television viewership of cricket around the world? Another good question from Jihan.
Well, that's a trick. Most people don't discover cricket here until they're adults. So good luck, playing it at that point at any kind of level of significance. So that's a trick. So that's non-existent, I would say, at this point. There are maybe a handful of kids that get exposed to cricket and then go out and seek it and try to make it at the highest level that they can get to. That don't come from a Commonwealth background. It's incredibly rare. It's so rare that I'm sorry to report that just doesn't happen. And what was the second part of that question? As far as getting people interested in watching international cricket or cricket abroad and things like that. Here, a very good thing that I've noticed a lot of people who start to get into cricket is obviously we have Willow. People always end up subscribing to that, and they end up following the CPL inevitably because it's in the same time zone as like our Eastern time zone for the most part. So it's very convenient for American fans to follow the CPL. It's very convenient for American fans to follow England because their tests started about 6 a.m. Eastern time. So as long as you're on the East Coast, England's great to follow. So that's but yeah, I guess
that's the same with Australia as well. If you want to watch a test in Australia, it's a bit different.
Yes, and I know that. So currently, ESPN Plus carries a lot of cricket, and ESPN Plus is like the streaming version of ESPN that you could subscribe to without having cable or pay TV. So you can and because of that, I think that does a good job of exposing people to cricket for the first time. Now,
and wasn't some Major League Cricket matches on CBS?
CBS Sports, CBS Sports, which you could get if you subscribed to something like Hulu, or there were a few, obviously pay TV or cable, and some there were a couple streaming packages that you could get it on. And I did talk to some people that watched it via that, and that was the only way they were able to watch it because they didn't have Willow. So they were able to watch those 3 games, and that was interesting. But it's getting more and more accessible. It's much easier to watch cricket now than it was in 2015 when I got into it. It was almost impossible, also cricket protects the ICC protects their copyright like ridiculously.
Yes.
And the NBA doesn't. The NBA, go ahead, take our stuff, make videos about it, do it for us.
Cricket's a very touchy when it
cricket
comes to copyright.
is silly when it comes to copyright. Silly.
But the only one who seems to get away with it is Rob Belinda.
Rob Belinda, I love that. Rob Belinda too. Yeah, I follow him. Subscribe to him. Everyone subscribes to him. Now he almost didn't get away with it. He's had a couple of battles where
he did.
Yeah.
But then Cricket Australia sort of said, you know what, this is like old footage that you're never going to see the light of day again. So we'll embrace
Cricket Australia should be paying this man $100,000.
He doesn't get monetized, and he's got 1 million subs.
He doesn't get monetized. He's got 1 million subs.
He doesn't do it for that. He doesn't want to. Well, you can't do it apparently in Australia. You can't get profits off that.
Of course, he can't. He can't do it. He can't do that. No, but I'm saying Cricket Australia should be like, look, man, we're going to pay you money for being such an awesome person.
He's got some pretty good stuff, rare stuff.
He does. It's really neat. It's honestly that his archive is a great resource. It's a great resource for people like myself who want to watch.
Well, you can see what cricket was like back in the 70s or the 80s. Yeah.
Right. Yes. It's like, absolutely. I want to drink with those guys. You know what I mean?
Not those cricketers from the 80s.
Yeah. In the 70s. In
the 70s, 80s. Tomo and Lily. And
absolutely. Love the
horsemen from the West Indies. Yeah, they're pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Tomo's a nice guy. He's just a typical Aussie though. But
absolutely.
He was the quickest out of Lily.
And he did a little bit of a crow hop at the end of his run up, which is a baseball technique to generate a lot of pace on when you're throwing from the outfield. You watch his legs when he goes side on, his legs cross under each other.
Yeah.
And then boom, that gets his hips going. And
apparently he hit the side screen on the full. People have said that he bowled a bouncer and it went over the boundary rope, hit the side screen on the full. And that's a bit of just going off track a little bit, but that's a bit of an interesting umpiring question, Nate. Opposed to you. All right, so if you bowl a bouncer, it goes over the batter's head. You either call it wides or byes, okay?
Sure.
But it goes over the boundary rope, but it hits the side screen on the full. So how many runs would you award to the batting side?
Oh, this is a good question.
Which many people don't know. So would you give it 6? Or would you give it another amount of runs if it's, 5 wides or byes or whatever, or 4,
The definition of a 6 is, does it include bat? Does the definition of a 6 include a batted ball? Then I would not give it a 6. I give it 5 runs.
You're correct. Your knowledge is spot on. You're correct. For a 6 to be awarded, it has to come off the bat.
Yeah.
So in that case, you would give it 4 byes if it wasn't a wide, but if it's a wide, you give it 5 wides.
Yeah.
Because it went over the boundary, even though it went over the full. So not many people know that, but good that you knew that, Nate. You got to think about it, but umpiring, there's different scenarios in that. But
that's boy, if someone ever had that scenario. The thing about umpiring is you think you've seen it all, but you never have.
Now, some people, write these scenarios. I got a book that has like 300 scenarios, and you have dogs that run onto the field. What will you do? Grab the ball, stuff like that. The ball goes into someone's car as they're driving past the ground over the boundary. Is it 6 or a dead ball? Stuff like that. Open to imagination when it comes to those sort of things.
Looking for loopholes.
There's many loopholes in cricket.
You have laws. You're going to have loopholes.
When you many teams have found a loophole when you're appealing for a stumping. You don't have to use a DRS review because for a stumping, the batter can't hit it, but they look for that anyway when they review the stumping. So if it did came off the edge and the keeper caught it, then you're out caught, even though you weren't out stumped. So that's a loophole.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
But a very good question there from Jihan. His third question is: any thoughts on sending the US most talented players on developmental tours to Australia or England to play whole seasons under experienced Australian coaches, etc., to learn and develop their game further, maybe getting involved in grade and club cricket in Australia or higher level league cricket or lower level county cricket in England, which we touched on a little bit.
Yeah. So this is a great question, Jihan.
Your answer to that.
Yeah, Jihan, this is what this is the potential that minor league cricket has as our kind of domestic T20. Now we don't have really, we have a little bit of 50 overs domestic cricket, but they tend to be localized leagues that tend to be actually pretty darn good. But yes, so with minor league cricket and the right partnerships, this is possible. With USA Cricket alone, not possible. You have to have something to swap. You got to have something to trade. New South Wales or Victoria, out of the kindness of their heart, aren't going to pay for a bunch of Americans to play domestically in Australia for nothing. What you can offer is a trade. We have opposite summers. You send some of your people here, we'll send some of our people there. And this is how it's always worked in cricket around the world with developed cricket nations. Yeah. So we can hop into that too by not reinventing the wheel, by simply just having a good product here. It opens up that possibility, and that's what I really hope for. This is something I seriously hope for.
Yeah, hopefully, because that will benefit the US.
I think it'll happen. I think it will happen. Yeah.
I know some players like from the Netherlands playing county cricket in England. They play in the local comp there because they can play counties and stuff like that. So maybe not at a first class level, but more so T20 sort of level, maybe one day cricket if you want that. But we haven't seen that in Australia for some time, where states aren't willing to give up spots to overseas players like you would in county cricket with a professional. You used to do that in Sheffield Shield cricket, but not anymore. It just doesn't happen. So it may happen for the US in terms of that exchange program, which would benefit both parties.
Yeah.
So another good question there, Jihan. I hope Nate's answered it to the best of his
Yeah,
ability.
Jihan, I hope I made up for. I probably did a bad job with that first question you asked, or underwhelmed, I guess, on that one. But
we finally reached the last one, Nate. Question 4. It's been a long session.
Yeah.
It's time for tea.
Yeah.
Just about. Any thoughts on USA cricket's relationship with the West Indies cricket in the context of their close proximity? Do you think the West Indies should continue to play home games in Florida, or maybe even New York, given the large Caribbean populations in those places?
If we can get a venue in New York, absolutely. If we can have better venues in the South here, where our fall and winters are mild, then I would love to see us have all kinds of neutral games. I think I've long thought that England should send players, or should send like a team or their own team here to play games in either Florida, or as these venues develop, like the Grand Prairie one. I've long thought that a lot of the northern hemisphere that wants to not have to go to the southern hemisphere in the winter, but maybe wants something a little more mild, can utilize these things when they happen, when these venues come around. The infrastructure needs to be there. That's the biggest obstacle for everything that we want to do. And I think so. I think Windies would, keep them playing here if they can. Now, not many people. The problem is that venue in Florida, the novelty wore off and people stopped going to the games unless India was involved. So that's the trick. But yeah, we do need a good relationship with West Indies. I think we can build that. We can actually leverage Major League Cricket for that a little bit. Major League Cricket is establishing a very good relationship with Canada right now. I think Major League Cricket's going to expand into Canada. Our relationship with Canada needs to be good, because I think I don't care if Canada's in the third division and we're in the second or whatever, in Cricket World Cup League 2 and they're in the third division or whatever.
Yeah.
The games are always good between USA and Canada. The rivalry is real in between the players. They're friends with each other off the field, but they want to beat the heck out of each other. And so that's the relationship I'd love to see build, is the Canada-USA relationship. Because if we can buoy each other, if both of these nations can stay big, we need that Ashes. We need our own Ashes. I think people will.
It's only fitting because they play the first international match. So
it's only fitting. Yeah, we haven't played. We haven't played the Audi Cup since 2017, and so that's been a long time. So yeah, we need to the relationship in our region needs to improve with every team, with Bermuda, with Canada, with Cricket West Indies. Yes, I'm going to say yes. We need to have keep a good relationship with them. We used to what the CPL used to do would be give one slot on their team, not in the playing 11, but in the roster. They give one spot in the team to a ICC Americas player. So anyone from the ICC Americas region that was not in the West Indies, they would only pay him $2,500 for the entire league, which isn't much money, but but it did give these guys some chances. And that's how Ali Khan got into the CPL. And Ali Khan obviously won 2 championships, bowling and the power play and the death. So yes, anything that enables that sort of thing to happen. And we do have a lot of West Indian players playing minor league. Raheem Cornwall, for example, I loved watching. I got to see him in person several times. Matthew Ford, who's up and coming. Sherfane Rutherford, a lot of West Indians that you've heard of that have played for West Indies have played in minor league, and that's the kind of relationship we need to keep, so that we can do some trades there too. But yeah, anything like that, I'm all for it. We need to keep these relationships.
Absolutely. And obviously the CPL play some games in Florida during their season, do they?
Sure. And I'm not against them coming back, even though they left because they stopped getting crowds. But I think, they need to just do a better job of marketing it. That's the big thing.
Yeah, that was the thing that you need to work on there. So Some very good questions there, Jihan. I hope Nate's
Jihan.
answered them to the best of your ability.
Thanks, Jihan. Good. Thanks.
Because he did mention, Nate, that he did see the interview with Nick and Gabe and he liked it, and he's seen some other interviews you've done. So
great. That's great. Yeah. Nick and Gabe are a pleasure. It's as you know. So a couple of really fun guys. I'm trying to get some gear for them from mine.
Gabe was saying, "Give me some gear. I need some gear. I need some." Yeah, we've got to contact Nate. So
yeah, I'm gonna try to get everybody some gear here. I've got some people. I got some people that got to come through for me. But yeah, I think we can get you some stuff.
Absolutely. Well, Nate, we finally reached the end of the session. Finally, if I can use that in Test cricket terms. It's going to be stumps. As an umpire myself, I'm going to remove the bails, call it a day. But we've been speaking for nearly 2.5 hours in total, but it's just been fantastic. I've learned so much. And this is what cricket does. It brings people together and we have a good chat. And hopefully we've answered the question that I started this discussion with. Will cricket kick off in the US? Potentially. There is promise. But there are a lot of areas and hurdles to get through to achieve that.
And it depends on what how you gauge success. But by every measure, I've been very happy with progress the last few months.
Yeah, absolutely. Major League Cricket's a step forward, and hopefully we'll get more players coming in from around the world. Like they did this season. You had some very good overseas players that have played international cricket at the highest level for all of the countries in the world.
Yep.
Which is fantastic, and hopefully we can help out Cricket USA. Hopefully the teams, the men's and the women's, can prosper and grow.
Yep.
And hopefully the T20 World Cup can, really make an impact in America. It's a World Cup. Support the team. You never know.
Absolutely.
Funny things have happened in World Cups, as we've seen, especially in the last T20 World Cup, as I mentioned before, with the Netherlands and Scotland, Ireland, creating some upsets in the past.
Yeah.
So you never know. USA may do that, but we shall wait and see. But Nick, I think everyone will say they've learned a lot from this episode. I've certainly learned a lot. Your cricket knowledge is pretty good. I'm really impressed, and I'm pretty sure everyone's impressed as well. But that's the thing. We just need to get the word out, do we? We need people like you. We need people like Nick and Gabe from Cricket for Americans, John 100%. Boy.
Yeah, there's
social media to pump cricket out to the American public, because if you come across it, you're gonna be curious and say, "Oh, I like this." Could be a sport for me. So.
Yep. Yeah, but, and we need everybody. We do, and there's room. There's room. So this is the thing.
Absolutely, and we've had Gabe on
the
podcast, and we talked about USA cricket and his thoughts on it, which is pretty good to hear his thoughts on it.
Yeah, and this is the thing with a lot of cricket content creators around the world. A lot of the really successful ones, they get very competitive. But we can't be that way here. You can't be like, oh, I have to compete with Nick and Gabe, or I have to compete with Peter Della Penna, or things like that. No, we cannot be that way. And I don't think we are. I think we're all like, yay, there's another person that wants this to work and wants to make content around this passion. And that's what I like. I like that, because we need everybody. If you care about the game, you need everybody, all guns blazing.
Absolutely. And that's why people do podcasts like me, and because we just want to promote cricket. We just want to make cricket a better sport.
Yeah.
Because one of those sayings I have, the game doesn't owe us anything, but we owe the game a lot.
Sure.
Which is true, because we take it for granted sometimes. But Nate, where can people find you? Big Innings, Emerging Cricket, your social media links. Yep. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch, or just have a chat about US cricket, or your podcast, or whatever?
Well, I'm Cricket Fan USA on Instagram and Twitter. That's my direct handle. And also we have Big Innings on YouTube, and Big Innings _ on what's it called, on Instagram. So that's where you can get me the most. Obviously, follow Emerging Cricket on Twitter and on Instagram and on YouTube. and reach out to me if you want. If you want to send me an email, cricknate@gmail.com. Pretty easy to find me. If you just Google the word cricket and Nate, I should be on the first page someplace. So yeah, just shoot me a message if you have questions about something. I love talking to people about this stuff, so and I realized that my DMs were off to people I don't follow, which was weird because that's not how I've ever done it, but I changed that. So thank you for that, Jack. Thanks for pointing that out to me.
It was a bit hard to contact you there. I was like, better change that feature.
Yeah.
So yeah, happy to help in that department.
Yeah. Thank
sort
you.
of learned the hard way.
Yeah. It'll work out now. So
yeah, fantastic. Once again, thank you, Nate, for joining us, and hopefully cricket in America will kick off, and hopefully we can have you back on the podcast in the future. Maybe bring Nick and Gabe on, maybe have an all-American panel and talk cricket. That would be fun, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. That would be great.
And then hopefully we can have more discussions on that. But thanks again for joining me on this cricket discussion today, Nate. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I have.
Absolutely.
For the last 2 hours and 42 minutes.
Yeah, and I just followed you back here. So
appreciate that. We need everyone following us and subscribe to our channel as well on YouTube, and catch out the great content that we do. But appreciate that, Nate. That's what I was going to say. If you haven't done so already, make sure you follow us, Twitter and Instagram, YouTube, subscribe to us. We want to get to 1,000 subscribers. We're nearly there. So get us to that goal.
Great.
We want 1,000 runs in a calendar year, Nate. So
absolutely.
As they say in Test cricket, 1,000 runs in a calendar year is pretty good. So we're nearly there. Check us out on that. Also, Anchor, Spotify, and Apple. We're on there as well. And we're also on Substack, which people can write articles, and you can have a notification in your email. So we're on that as well. So make sure you get around us in that, because it really does help us out, really, especially when you're doing a podcast by yourself. It really does help. So
yeah, true.
It can be a very demanding sort of thing doing a podcast, as you would experience, Nate.
I can definitely empathize with you.
Yeah. But once again, thank you, Nate, for joining me. And I hope everyone listening or watching to this episode enjoyed it. I hope you stayed for the duration of our chat. I know it's been a bit of a long session, but it's been enjoyable. We may have to cut it into 2 or 3 parts.
Sounds good.
We have to see. But thank you, Nate, so much for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for joining us as well. Until next time, keep safe and bye for now.